Here we go again with another episode of Real Estate Experts.
Hello, I'm Darcy Hardy with eXp Realty.
And I'm Keith Pitch with Loan Depot. So welcome back to the studio. We are like in the same place.
So excited to be in the studio again. Yes.
Bam. So here we go. Jay, you've done amazing work. We love what you're doing. When it's all said and done, I think we should do a walk around on one of our shows because I think that'd be really cool to show everybody what the studio looks like because it's super transformed and super excited for what is going on here.
Not that they knew what it looked like beforehand, but trust me, it's awesome.
It's awesome. You can see the update. A little bit about today's show. We are going to blow your mind with some real estate magic. Boosh. And before we get there, we have to do a little bit of... I don't know if I want to jump into this topic. We got to start the show like we always start the show, Darcy. Rate the rates.
Rate the rates.
Rate the rates.
Is sometimes fun and sometimes not as fun.
Lately, not so fun. So let's talk about rates, guys. We've been going through an increasing rate environment is what I like to call it. And what I would say to that is if you guys look at the Freddie Mac mortgage rate survey, we're up to 6.7% on a 30-year fixed with 0.9, almost a whole point in cost, right? Discount points to get that rate. And that is assuming you have a great credit score of 740 or above, you're putting 20% down on a conforming loan limit, right? So what is this saying? In the last month, in September, we've jumped up another point and we're now talking mid-high sixes. And if you're not putting down the 20%, you're in the sevens. You're touching sevens. So what does this mean for you, the buyer? What this means for you, the buyer, is all the conversations I'm having with my clients, you are the master of your budget, right? So when rates go up, budget changes a little bit and what you're shopping for changes. So it doesn't mean it's a bad time to buy a house. It means that you need to buy the right house for your budget. Your success in making that monthly payment is what's going to dictate your long-term success in the real estate market. So definitely stick to those guns. If your budget is your budget, stay there. There's a big difference that I've talked to Darcy about. We talk about in our first-time homebuyer classes. There's a big difference between your budget and your max qualification.
Oh, huge difference. And never get those confused because you might qualify for, $2 million. Wonderful. But when it comes down to it, what can you afford with the lifestyle that you currently live is way different. So no matter what a lender says they'll approve you for, you need to pay attention to what you can afford monthly, what you're comfortable with.
You get to drive the bus. So stick to your guns on the budget. The rate environment, I'm hesitant. It's gone up, it's gone down. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen the most volatility in the bond market that we've seen in probably the last 30 years. Yeah. Right? So it's very unprecedented times. It'll go up, it'll come down, it'll go up, it'll come down. The number one takeaway, stick to your budget. Number two, when you're in the position that you're under contract on that new house and you're okay with the payment, lock the rate. Don't play the guessing game. Oh, rates could go down, rates could go down, rates could go down.
Not worth it.
Yeah, they could go down. They could also go up and put you right out of your budget and off that house. So if you like it at that point in time, don't play the market. Don't try to time the market. Just get in, get on the way, and get into that house.
And one thing that I want to point out, because, every single industry has insiders that are seeing something, and watching how they're reacting to stuff makes a huge difference. And what I've noticed lately is a whole lot of my realtor friends and lender friends are buying properties right now. Oh, yeah, you just did. So I think that's important to point out because the rest of the world is freaking out about rates. But the people on the inside are saying, yeah, rates are up. But this means that I have more negotiating power. This means that in general, I just have more power. There's more things on the market. I have choice. Yeah.
This is the most choice we've had in the market since 2018.
In years. Like it's
4 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Amazing. So knowing that the insiders are taking this opportunity to go out and buy, that's one of the indicators that tells me it's a really good time for buyers right now.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. With that being said, that is Rate the Rates.
That's Rate the Rates. Let's be done with that.
Let's be done with that. We got to move on because we have an amazing show that I think is going to, nobody talks about this. Yeah. Absolutely nobody talks about this in any huge circles. And we want to get the word out because in changing markets like this, you can do some cool things with real estate.
There's so many opportunities. And this is just something that most of the public doesn't know about.
Yep.
And the few people that do, keep it quiet. They don't share this opportunity. And
our guest is smiling right now because she's like, well, I'm busy.
She's busy, right.
But so we're going to go a little bit out of order because to jump in today's topic, we're going to do a Mythbuster already. We don't have the goggles today. No. Unfortunately, we'd have our goggles on, right?
We can pretend.
But the Mythbuster is going to introduce our guest today. So, Darcy, what's our myth?
Our myth is that the only ways to purchase a property are through a bank,
Loan Depot,
any bank,
Loan Depot,
through a bank or through with cash.
Bam, that's it.
And that's what most people think. You think those are the options. Those are the most commonly used options. However, it's a complete myth that those are the only options. There are so many other fantastic options out there. And
today we have an amazing guest that I've known for the better part of almost 5 years now, which is kind of crazy. With Evergreen Resource, Evergreen Success, excuse me. We have Marishka Pilch joining us. So welcome, Marishka.
Yay!
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And gosh, you're going to make me spill my secrets, aren't you?
Yes, we are, because your secrets are worth like millions of dollars in lots of different ways. And Marishka, give us a little bit about yourself before we talk about some alternative ways to not utilize a bank and not utilize cash.
Yeah. You like a quick history sort of thing?
So, give us a quick history. You and your husband, you founded an amazing company.
Evergreen Success. My husband, Larry Gill, and I, we started our investing company. It's just a small privately held company. I mean, we're not big operators, but we like to think that we do quality deals. And, I have a little bit of... Pardon me?
You're smooth operators.
Smooth operator. I do love Sade, by the way. Sorry, I just had to slip that in. But so my dad was a builder back in the 70s and 80s when interest rates were 18%. I was just a little kid, so I didn't really pay attention to what he was doing exactly. But I know that he was doing a lot of creative deal structures, whether they were seller financing or lease options or who knows what. But I was too young to really pay attention, at the time. And then later in the 90s, I actually worked for a while as a mortgage loan originator and brokered loans and what have you. And so that gave me a kind of a solid foundation of, how things work in the financial realms. And it wasn't until later when, after my husband and I had been married for 10, 12 years, 10 years probably. And I'd been talking about wanting to invest in real estate. And he was not all that excited about it because he'd never really been exposed. And but so we basically turned our former primary into a rental house, and we actually did a little bit of a twist. We sold it on a lease with an option to buy. We'll get to that in a moment, and then bought our new house. And over the years, we did a number of things like that. And after the housing crisis of 2008. We ended up working, either as consultants or sometimes even acquiring properties from a lot of flippers, primarily, but also just from mom and pop homeowners who had houses who they didn't really know what to do because they weren't in a position where they could just sell it for the profit that they needed or anticipated, on the market through the MLS. And so we offered an alternative for them. And that actually served us really well, for a number of years. And in the process, through the years, we've ended up doing other things. We buy mortgage notes, and that's a whole nother realm of things. But, and then we, so basically I love creative finance, and that's just kind of been my gig. I am also a licensed realtor with eXp in both Washington and Idaho, which is now my home. This business, this life has given me the opportunity that when, the world fell apart a few years ago, we basically just said, you know what? Let's just move to Idaho. So we did.
Off we go. And I followed you.
And you followed me.
And I followed you. So yes.
I'm not there.
I'm not there.
I'm not there.
Kind of funny that we're meeting virtually now and you're in a different state.
It's like you're right down the hill from us. So,
right.
Right
so
on.
Anyway, I don't know. Does that kind of give you a background? And
that does give us a background, because you are really the alternative choice to traditional financing. Right? You made mention of one really cool tool, which is a lease option purchase, which I want to jump into because it's done wrong.
Oh, it's done wrong all the time.
All of the time.
A lot.
And I just want to go out to my realtor partners that have advised these things to happen. Like, LegalZoom is not your friend, people. Do it the right way. And then seller carried finance. So those are the two things that I know you're an expert in, and I wanted to share with our viewers out there to say, hey, we can look at the real estate market in some different avenues. So let's jump into a lease option purchase and explore.
I'm pretty sure they're illegal, right?
Say again?
I'm pretty sure they're illegal, right?
That is the that's the go-to that people go with. They either give you that deer in the headlights look like.
Yeah. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Or they go, oh, that's illegal. And maybe a little news flash banner down here. Lease option purchases are not illegal. They just need to be done right. And so
you just need to do them right.
Yeah. Tell us what a lease option is, Marishka.
Well, very simply, it's two parts. It's a lease, which, has all the things that go along with a lease.
Like to rent a house.
Like rent a house, right? Or rent an apartment, or rent a commercial building, or whatever. It's actually done probably more frequently in commercial
way more frequently
arenas than it's done in the residential realm. But it's a wonderful tool for the residential realm, whether you're a buyer or a seller, by the way. It doesn't just have to benefit one party. It can benefit, both parties. So, but it's a lease, and then it's an option to buy. And an option is a special agreement between the buyer and the seller, where the seller agrees to sell this house to the buyer for a specified price for a specified period of time. It could be 3 months, it could be 3 years, whatever.
Right.
But it's memorialized on paper. And in exchange for holding that property exclusively for them, so the seller can't just go off and sell it to someone else. They have to agree to sell that that property to the buyer. They have an exclusive option to buy, and in exchange for that, the seller receives some consideration. What is consideration? That is an amount of money. And so the seller receives an amount of money in agreement to hold this property. Now, what are the buyer's obligations? Well, they're not obligated to anything, really. They have the option, but not the obligation to purchase the property. Now, it makes sense, of course, when you're structuring this deal, that you want to make sure that the buyer has or will have the ability to purchase. And there's a number of ways, and we can talk about how that might work. But you don't ever want to put somebody in a situation where they have no chance of ever being able to buy that home. It needs to make sense. The monthly payment needs to make sense, all of those things. But in exchange for that, the seller may, let's just say that they have a $500,000 house and the market has, kind of slipped a little bit, and they just don't want to let it go for $475,000. They might find someone who wants to buy that house or wants to lease it with an option to buy, they agree to pay $500,000 or possibly even a little bit more. Who knows? Because this is an amenity, right? This is like having, hardwood floors or granite countertops. And so you might pay a little bit more for that in exchange to having the luxury of time before you exercised your option to buy.
Yeah.
And, once they do that, then at that point, when the time comes, well, maybe they can get bank financing at that point. There might also be other alternatives, or they could walk away. But the benefit to the seller is that, they have a tenant who isn't just a serial renter. They have somebody who is planning to buy the home. So who's going to take better care of the house, a renter or a future homeowner?
That's a great point.
In my experience, it's been the few. So even when I've had lease option tenants who, for whatever reason, can't buy or something has happened in their life and they've chosen not to, they usually are apologetic to me and they say, gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm not able to buy. But they've taken, 9 times out of 10, they've taken really good care of the property and sometimes even improved it.
Right. And it's so common that people have a situation that they don't want to purchase right now, but they know it's a good time. They found what they want. They just don't have the capability right now. Whether it be their job is they're going to be getting a big bonus coming up, or they're going to be getting a promotion, or they just moved to the area and they're not sure they're going to stay. There's so many times.
There's such good reason. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and I just want to go back really quick and make sure everybody gets this clear in their minds that there's one lease and then there's an option to buy. It's like a compound sentence, right? There's a comma in there. So there's the lease, just normal renting a house, right? And then there's the option to purchase. And you mentioned, Marishka, that there's a consideration. Is that consideration paid down towards like a lump sum, like, hey, I'll give you $10,000 at the signing, or is it like during a monthly payment, or how does the consideration?
The answer is yo.
Is that a yes, no?
That's it. I mean, the answer is it depends. So, an upfront option consideration fee is something that I think is worthwhile to do. It demonstrates skin in the game. It demonstrates some financial ability. But in some situations, I've even taken part of a option consideration upfront. And then maybe a note and received payments for the remainder, because maybe I wanted a $30,000 option fee and they only had $20,000 right now. But I felt that they were otherwise, good tenants and they really want, they had the ability, once they took care of A, B, and C, to buy the home, and they really wanted to buy the home, and we weren't overstretching their budget, so it has to make sense again.
And this is the really cool thing about doing this is it's customizable every single time. Whereas when you're working with a bank, here are the rules, and they just rarely switch them. Rarely switch them up.
But they're printed out in manuals and stuff. Printed out.
So so many people have unique circumstances. And
say I want to buy this house and I'm going to be getting a $10,000 bonus, and all I have right now is $20,000, and you want $30,000 for the option consideration. In a few months, I'm going to have that $10,000 bonus, or I'm working a second job and I'll have that for you over the next few months or something. Yeah, customizable.
We all know that there's people out there that we would not let borrow money from us.
Heck yeah.
And there's people out there that might be a little rough on the qualifications, but we would have no problem loaning to them. Yeah. So it really, really allows us to dive in and figure something out that works for
character matters.
Person. Exactly. Yeah. Character does matter. And I'm thank God, finally, character matters.
Right on. Well, the reason why I wanted to break those two down is where we on the financing side get into trouble when we try to exercise the purchase is sometimes lease options are written in that, oh, hey, we're going to charge you market rent and give you $500 of that market rent towards your lease option, which it has to be above the market rent. So the option over here is what gets credited towards your mortgage application. What you pay on the lease side of the coin, it doesn't get credited anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Unless it, like you mentioned, if it's above
market value of rent.
And so it's really important that you document those things at the outset.
Yeah.
And this is a good example of why you need somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Because the numbers could look the same on paper, but if they're not structured correctly, you're not going to be able to do the deal. And that gets really frustrating to a lot of people. But we have to set things up correctly for so many reasons. So somebody like Marishka, who's been doing this for a while, that has the experience and the knowledge, makes a big difference in this situation.
Huge. Now, I'm sure there's people out there asking this question, Marishka, because if you were a great listener, you heard that you guys come up with a purchase price at a future date. Right? So do you have like a magic 8 ball that you shake and it gives you a number, or yeah, exactly. Woo! How does the buyer and seller in that situation, or the leasee / buyer, negotiate with the landlord / seller the future value? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, it's kind of fluid, really. I try to be realistic about it, whether I'm on the buy side or the sell side. But, you can look at what trends are. Of course, we can't account for crazy things that happen in the market, right? So if the market is going up, it's on an upward trajectory, we can assume that we do assume. I shouldn't say we can, but we often do, right? We assume that it will continue up. And so, a seller might look at, okay, what am I going to be losing out on if I were to hold this property off the market?
Right.
And so you might say, okay, well, properties have been appreciating at, 5% a year or 10% a year or something like that. So, so you might use that as your guide. Now, what's going to happen if, there's, some big thing that happens in the world and prices go down? Well, you can also have stipulations in there. And again, this is all kind of customizable, but this happened, we had a guy who, he had moved here from Ohio in, I don't know, the early teens. Okay. And in Ohio, property values, his house had lost 50% of value.
Wow.
And he was that guy that Darcy was talking about, who he had moved to the area. He was kind of new to the job. He thought he would really like it, but he wasn't sure. And then he also had this thing in the back of his mind of, well, what happens if, property values tank again? Right. So a lease option was good for him for a number of reasons, but we just stipulated in the contract that if the property did not appraise, we would extend the terms until such time as it did appraise.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Solve the problem. I mean, so it's just a matter of really, figuring out, okay, what are the nuances of this situation? What are the needs of this buyer? What are the needs of this seller? And just crafting an agreement that makes sense for all parties.
Yeah, that's cool. You're protecting the downside for the buyer, and the seller's happy, and they get to try out the new area. So why don't more people know about lease options?
That's a good question. I think that there's a lot of reasons for, well, at least there's at least a few.
I started in 99. Lease options were very, I would probably say 1 out of 5 or 6 transactions was a lease option.
Really?
Right. Well, but what was happening just before then? We were coming out of a high interest rate environment. So like me, if you started in the 90s, you probably had people, wanting to give you a hug when you refinanced them down to 10 or 12%, right?
Yes. Yeah. Hugs were aplenty. Now people are mad at me because 7% on the table. So.
Right.
Dirty.
Yeah. So, so you think about that. when interest rates were, let's say, 18%, as they were, in the 80s, well, nobody can afford that, for crying out loud. And so if somebody had, just like right now, we have people who a few years ago either purchased or refinanced their house down in the 2s or the 3s.
Yeah.
They can actually, charge, and rents have gone up. They can charge a market rent and still cash flow like crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so I think rates have a lot to do with it. So it kind of depends on where we are in the cycle and where interest rates are. When rates are really, really high, these creative strategies come back into play, just so that real estate transactions can get done. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking that in addition to rates, just credit availability has just really compressed.
It's going to get tighter.
It's going to get tighter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get ready for it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. When rates go high, we find other ways to make dreams come true.
Yeah.
Wait, isn't there a quote from Jurassic Park, "Life finds a way"? Yeah. Jeff Goldblum, love you, buddy. But yeah, so
shout out.
Real estate finds a way, just like life.
And it's true. There's awesome creative people out there that figure out a way to make the numbers work for everyone.
So just a quick recap. Lease options aren't illegal. There's two parts. There's a lease, and then there's option to purchase. And you can protect yourself on the purchase side. Seller, buyer, awesome. And, it's just a flexible, customizable transaction, which that sounds like a win-win situation to me.
It really does.
It sure can be. I would just say, if anybody's thinking of doing this, make sure that you're using, documents that are created by attorneys. Make sure that you're memorializing these agreements that you might have verbalized and made a handshake on, because handshakes don't mean anything if one hand, if somebody is disgruntled, you need to memorialize everything on both sides.
And get it notarized.
And get things notarized, for crying out loud. Yes. I would even go so far as to say, obviously it's not a guarantee of that the person is going to be able to get qualified for a mortgage. But if you're a seller or working with a seller, it might even make sense to just, have that future borrower, talk to a mortgage loan originator, say, hey, what do you need to get done? And kind of get that memorialized as well, because there's just a lot of things that T's that need to be crossed and I's dotted.
And there's multiple ways to do this. Some people are already in a lease situation. In fact, I was getting my haircut, my annual haircut this week. I didn't realize it had been
annual.
I didn't realize it had been a year since I got my haircut. Thank you, Bradley, for cutting my hair. I was talking to him about his situation, and they're in a house that they can't afford to buy right now. They love the house. They would love to buy it in the future. The seller, they don't know their intent. The owner, current owner, they don't know their intentions right now, if they plan on holding it for a long time or just for a short time. So I encouraged him to go ahead and talk to the seller and try to set up something where there is an option so it doesn't get sold from underneath them.
Out from underneath them.
Right? So that's a very common situation. The other thing that we see sometimes is a person that's moving to an area or wants to buy, and they find a house that's on the market.
Yep.
And a person that's willing to buy the house with an agreement that, hey, we'll buy the house, you will lease it from us, and here's what will happen in the future if you decide to buy it. So there's two very different ways to go about doing this. Mm-hmm. I think that's important to point out.
There's great things, and it's just not done at a wide level, so it's not commonly known. And I think right now, sellers looking for options. Sellers are looking for options big time right now. And maybe instead of keeping the house on the market and doing another price reduction or paying $20,000, $30,000 in a rate buy down for the buyer, maybe they open it up to a lease option situation and they get it under contract. To your point, Marishka, their rate on that underlying mortgage is probably really, really small.
It could be. I mean, if they were smart and went to you and got refinanced,
Amen to that.
Likewise, if they don't do it as a lease option.
Yeah. You saw, I set that up. I set it up.
If they decide not to do it as a lease option and they still want to get rid of the property, but they don't need all of that cash in hand right now, they might choose to be the bank themselves.
Yeah.
The seller can finance the buyer themselves, but it's complicated.
And this blows people's mind. Marishka, talk to us about seller financed transactions.
Okay. There's so many different ways to structure a seller finance deal. Yeah. And a lot of times people think the easiest way would be, Keith, you have a house that you own free and clear. You have no mortgage on it. Congratulations. Good for you.
Well done.
You can easily sell that house with financing, which basically means instead of like you forking out cash, you're just taking monthly payments for your equity.
Yep.
Okay. So that can be structured, again, with whatever, pricing and monthly payment makes sense. The term can be dictated by a combination of the monthly pricing and the interest rate that you all agree upon. And I'll just go down another fun road. Say you don't want to wait 15 or 30 years to get all your money back. Well, if you properly structured it, you could sell all or part of that mortgage to note buyers.
Note buyers.
And then you can get your money out.
This is 500 level real estate stuff, folks. This is like really deep masterclass type of stuff. And we'll get into note financing. So it's so powerful, you guys, what Marishka just said, because if I'm selling to Marishka and I own this house free and clear, and there's lots of you out there because I'm talking to you. I talk to you right now. You're like, hey, I own my house free and clear and I want to go buy a different house, but I need the equity out of this one before I go buy that one. And I bring up the conversation piece. Like, have you ever thought about annuitizing that house and becoming the seller financed owner of that house instead of a bank getting paid 6%, 7%? Why don't you get paid 6%, 7%?
Right? Yeah.
And let's break this down. The house comes out of the seller's name and goes into the buyer's name.
Yes.
But the seller, who is now the bank,
yes,
gets put on the title as a lien holder.
Yes.
So if the buyer decides the new owner decides to sell, they have to pay off that lien and pay off the old owner before they can actually sell. So it's all legally handled in the background, but it's super clean and simple. It's really not much different than buying with a loan on paper.
Swapping out the bank for the
things.
Yeah. You still want to have a note. You still want to have, a deed of trust or a mortgage, so that everything is all done legally and properly. And so, like you said, Darcy, if that new borrower buyer sells the house, then just like a bank would get, hey, we've got, we need to get a 10-day payoff. They're going to contact that seller who carried back the financing and say, hey, we need to verify the loan balance the borrower is selling or refinancing or whatever, and we need to get you get paid off. So
that's powerful stuff.
Really powerful stuff. Oh, and by the way, do you think you'd be able to sell a house faster if you offered financing?
Huge. And the cool thing, I, the mortgage originator, right? I've got program requirements of 3% down, 5% down, 10% down, jumbo, 20, 25, what have you. What requirements does that seller financier, when they become their own bank in that free and clear situation, what options can they offer the buyer?
Anything that the parties agree to. Now, I would have some recommendations.
Right.
Depending on what their ultimate goals were.
Yeah.
And also how well they, sometimes you might have a family deal and you might structure things differently than maybe you would for, a perfect stranger. But, I think skin in the game is always a good idea, but they don't have to. I mean, it's really up to them. They could structure a first and a second mortgage. Maybe they want to have some cash flow and they want to sell that first position note or vice versa,
Right.
Yeah, that's
and
a really
get their
good
cash.
point.
So a lot of good ways to do that. So with the second position note, that brings up a whole other thing. Let's just say, Keith, you have that $500,000 house, but you have a $250,000 mortgage.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, few different ways you could structure that, but an easy one would be, okay, we're going to have a second position loan. We could do a wrap mortgage.
Yeah.
Where it would include the underlying payment. So there's maybe you only need 10%, or 20 or whatever. So there's a lot of different ways that they could be structured.
Gotcha.
Especially considering that many of us bought when rates were like 2.5, 2 3/4, with rates now being
you can make money on your mortgage.
Range. Right. I don't have, if I'm going to do seller financing to the person that's buying my house, I can charge what I want. I don't have to charge market rate. I don't have to charge 7%. Let's say I decided to give them 6% instead. Yeah. I'm making a pretty good differential there.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of people don't think about that arbitrage piece of making a spread between. Everybody loves that word.
Hashtag arbitrage right here. Hashtag.
And if you don't know what that means, look it up. It's amazing to me how many people don't understand how the world works, and it's mainly arbitrage.
And quite frankly, okay, let's just take a step back for a minute. This is how banks work.
Yep.
Right?
Amen.
We have been, okay, Keith, I love you.
Go for it. I know where you're going with this. We've had this conversation before. Go for it.
Yeah, we've had this conversation. Banks have done a really good job of training us that we don't want to mess with finance. It's so messy and it's complicated, and
you might have to foreclose on somebody.
You might have to foreclose. Oh my goodness.
Which is a nightmare, I will say. It's not fun to do.
It can be a nightmare. I've also, I'm just going to digress for a little bit. I do that a lot. But sometimes it doesn't have to be a nightmare at all. I've had situations where I've been able to negotiate a deed in lieu of foreclosure. Yeah. We have a borrower who is in default. We're in communication with them. We work out something so that they can just walk away from the property with their head held high. I'm not going to go after them. And in return, they're just going to deed the property back to me. It all has to be done legally and properly and blah, blah, blah. But no hassle. You don't have those, minimum time periods. Like, you have to wait X number of days in a deed of trust state or wait for a court date if you're in a mortgage state. You can do this, if the parties are willing to cooperate and work together. And oftentimes, that can be done. So foreclosure isn't fun and nobody likes it. And quite frankly, most banks, they don't want the property back.
They don't want it either.
They don't want it.
They just want to get paid.
Yep.
But it isn't an insurmountable obstacle. There are, there's ways to manage it and ways to mitigate it, quite frankly. But anyway, that's another point.
Yeah.
Where I was going to go was with the banks. So, we all have checkings and savings accounts. And if we're lucky, the bank might give us 0.25% interest on our.
Hey, they're up above a point now.
Are they really?
They're up above a point now.
I have not gone into a bank in I can't tell you how long, so I don't even know this.
That's the last time I've been to a bank.
I do everything virtually. But anyway, okay, so you're getting a point. Ooh,
yeah.
So we put our money on deposit, and the banks will give us a little bit more if we agree to put our money on longer deposits, like in a certificate of deposit or something like that. They'll give us a little bit more. It's not earth-shattering.
Let's call it 2%.
Let's call it 2%.
Okay.
So they have long-term use of our money. What? They have use of our money?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. They're loaning that money out to other borrowers at a much higher rate. So they're making that spread.
Let's call it 5%.
Let's call it 5% or 18. It just depends.
Yeah, or 8. Oh, yeah. If it's a credit card, I need your fingers if we're going to go to 18.
And I don't think people realize, and I wouldn't have if this hadn't been my job one summer as an intern, I had the amazing opportunity of pulling money out of an account overnight and investing it in an overnight funds.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's such a little thing, but when they have the ability to pull millions and millions and invest it just overnight, they're making that much money in one
incremental spreads. Yep.
It adds up over time.
It adds up.
And that is what the bank is doing with your money.
Yay.
They're making.
Not that there's anything wrong with
there's
that.
Nothing
there's
wrong.
nothing.
You just need to understand it and perhaps decide that you might want to tap into some of that yourself.
You can do that yourself.
And that's exactly what we're talking about with these seller financing and lease options. It's being able to capitalize on that, letting somebody else use your money so you can make that spread instead of the bank. Because you are the bank.
That's pretty cool stuff.
It's awesome stuff.
That is super awesome stuff. Okay, so you introduced it because you brought up note investing.
Oh no!
Now we'll just dive into this a little bit just to put our toe in the water. But note investing is what?
Okay, Keith, you have a mortgage, right?
I have a mortgage.
You've had them in the past. So have you ever had a situation where you had a mortgage and 2 months later, you're paying your mortgage to a different bank?
Right. Yep. I was paying it to the bank of Jason, our producer Jay, Bank of Jay, and now it's with the Bank of Darcy.
Yeah.
That's right. Right. So now, Darcy bought that note.
Right.
Yeah, the Bank of Darcy bought that note. So this happens all the time in institutional lending. It also happens all the time in, what would you call it, small operator note investing. Yeah. And so there's a whole pool of people all around the country, the world, whatever, who invest in notes. And sometimes these are notes that were maybe originated by a bank. Many times they're notes that were originated by a mom and pop home seller and who have decided to sell their note. And so, we will buy these notes and basically now we're receiving the cash flow just like the bank would.
Yeah, that is super cool. So you're investing in real estate, the collateralization of real estate, but you're not owning.
I'm technically investing in the paper itself. Yeah. I mean, this is what I get in exchange for.
Right.
Ooh, it's so sexy.
It's pretty fancy, right?
Yeah. File folders. Yeah.
That's what I get.
That's
and
another
that is
way.
a deed, as a deed of trust and all of that. So, should something go sideways, I can, take back the property if I need to.
Yeah. So if you're sitting on a pile of cash and want to deploy that cash, you could go buy mortgage notes.
For sure.
That's crazy. See, it's interesting because I had this epiphany when I first met Marishka at the brewery there in Burien. What was that brewery? Which one was it? I remember the big area, but anyway.
Elliott Bay.
Yes.
Elliott Bay.
Bay Brewery. And you started talking about this. I'm like, well, duh, that's what we do all day long. Why couldn't Johnny Cash Money go buy a mortgage note or Sally home seller sell her house and do a note to the seller and get paid that mortgage money? We all think this singular way that we have to completely.
We've been trained.
Yeah, we've been. You said that with disdain.
No. I said trained. That with. No, I just wanted to make sure it was emphasized that we have been conditioned to do things a certain way, and we, shouldn't think that it could be done differently. That's all.
Yeah, there's lots of ways.
I feel like banks, but
Gotcha. Yep. So, that is super cool that we are talking about this, because right now I think in this market, any and every avenue to transact business should be explored, right?
Yeah.
I mean, very recently, as of beginning of this year, like cash was king and everybody else was second place. Now we get to look at different things and
different shift,
apply ourselves in a different way. So super cool.
And it's important to note.
I see what you did there.
Nice. I see what you did.
To think that it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm just buying one note, or like there can be a package of them. You can also buy a portion of one with other people. There's many different ways to structure it. You don't have to have millions and millions to be able to do this. You can be an average person. I know
people who have invested in notes with $100 out of their IRA, their self-directed retirement account.
Exactly.
Nice.
You just have to know how to get into it. And actually, on that topic, do you have a recommendation of where to start?
For which?
Notes.
For notes. Yeah. There's a few groups out there. I guess before I would tell somebody to jump into buying notes, I think it really makes sense to explore. And so there's a lot of Facebook groups out there about notes. I'm sorry, the names are escaping me right now.
That's fair. I put you on the spot.
But you and Larry went through a note school, didn't you?
Yeah, we went through note school. I don't necessarily, I mean, it's a great training and great group of people. But I mean, I think you need to be pretty confident that that's a path that you want to take. And
that's a life choice.
It is a life choice. Yeah. I mean, it's deciding that you're going to go to an Ivy League college as opposed to a tech school.
Oh, good enough.
You know, I mean, you can get great things out of a tech school, but you've decided that you really want to focus and, you know, get advanced training or whatever. So, I mean, you just have to decide, you know, but I think it's a good idea to explore first and ask questions. There's a lot of information. Yeah. You know, thank God for the internet. There's a lot of information. Some of it's not good, but
what? It's not all accurate.
I know, right?
Trust and verify.
But it is a fairly small universe of private investors who do, you know, buy notes, and we don't know who everyone is, but I mean, it is a smaller pool of people than, say, maybe people who invest in houses and real estate.
Gotcha.
And so word gets around. So you just want to make sure you're really doing your due diligence, not only on the note, but on the people that you're working with.
And I think that's a really good point. You need to fully understand whichever avenue you're taking before you do it. And there's many different ways to research that. If you have questions, if you need to be connected, feel free to give us a call. We're happy to give you some connections and get you started down the path that might be right for you to make that choice.
Well, Marishka, before we wrap up and go, you have a very exciting thing coming up this month.
We do, yes. So when we moved to Coeur d'Alene, we connected with a couple of real estate investor groups, but we realized that there hadn't really been any big real estate investing events. And so enter the first annual Coeur d'Alene Real Estate Investor Summit on October 21st and 22nd.
That's super exciting.
I know. We're so excited about that. And we have been so blessed and so honored to have a number of really rock star speakers.
Oh my gosh.
Some of them from around the country who have said, I'd love to speak at your events. So
that's phenomenal.
I know.
So
I don't know how this happened, but
where did the panelists go? I mean, you got Ryan Gibson, Cloud Diamond, Jennifer Beatles, Joe McCall, many more. I mean,
Jeff Watson.
Julie Clark's on there too.
Julie Clark's on there.
Our connector. Nice.
Yeah, the connector. Yeah.
So CDAREI summit.com. People can still register, I'm assuming, yeah?
They can. Awesome. We're having a boat cruise on Saturday evening, and that is getting very limited just because of the weather. In October, we wanted everybody to be able to sit inside if they so choose.
And your guests appreciate that.
They do. Yeah, I think they will. Yeah, so we've definitely got room for the conference. We still do have room for the boat cruise, but that is getting limited. And we're really excited and looking forward already to next year. And we've got great plans for that.
That's awesome. I'm super excited. I will be there. I will be there.
Yeah.
And looking forward to seeing all of our friends from over here in the Puget Sound area coming over to our neck of the woods.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks coming from the Seattle area.
Yep,
we've got people coming from, coming up from the southern part of the state, from the Boise area.
Yep.
And then, like I said, we've got speakers coming from Ohio and St. Louis and Phoenix and Tucson. And we're really stoked.
Exciting time. Right on.
Super exciting. And, a lot of people just think real estate is real estate. No, residential is different than commercial, just like family ownership is very different than investor ownership. And there's so many different groups that do a great job at really promoting what they're about. And I'm thrilled that you guys are starting that up in Coeur d'Alene, because Coeur d'Alene has just busted through these last few years. It has grown so much.
Oh yeah.
And it's a real contender in real estate now compared to what's
last year, I think it was, the Wall Street Journal had Coeur d'Alene is the number one, real estate hotspot in the country. Yep. And of course that didn't help that, more people coming in.
Even more.
Going up,
thanks, Wall Street Journal. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the locals are cursing you. But
the locals definitely are cursing. Yeah. So make sure you change your license plates if you move here. Do it quickly.
Be a local fast.
But you guys, thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and we could probably go on for hours.
Yes, we could. And our pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
It's been wonderful having you on, and I can't wait to work with you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Right on, Marishka. We'll catch up with you later, and we'll definitely get all of your information down below in the comments. And so if anybody wants to reach out to you, they'll be able to find you. And look forward to seeing you on the 21st.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Take care.
Right on. So there you go. A whole new world. A whole new world.
I hope everybody got an idea of just how different you can structure a real estate deal and how many options there are for everybody out there. You don't have to be perfectly fitting into the regular box in order to buy a place.
Amen. So next month, we're going to bring another amazing show. So if you have any questions or comments or need some follow-up on this, definitely comment, share, get that out there. But next month, we're going to talk about real estate planning.
I'm excited about
planning
this one
with
too.
Trusts and wills and all that stuff, and making sure the continuity and the legacy of real estate lives on well past you.
Right.
So super exciting. And so join us next month for another awesome episode of Real Estate Experts. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.